Fidel Castro overthrew the Cuban Republic in 1959. Supposedly, he had help from the CIA to do that, right? I think the CIA might deny that, but, I do know that at the time, there was, according to Carlos and according to the people that I interviewed, like there was like some funding going into Castro's campaign. But then when Castro came into power, obviously he was a socialist, communist, like he was an extreme leftist. The US wanted him out immediately, so the Bay of Pigs and all that sort of stuff happened.
The original Cuban Revolution, there's evidence that the CIA was part of that?
It's interesting. Yeah, so primary sources told me that in Panama, right? And I call them primary sources because they said they heard it directly from Castro, and Castro told them this directly. But one really interesting thing as well is
who said Castro, not like a source that you can't talk about? Or
no, I can talk about. So Carlos told me that, and then this guy Trujillo told me that as well. Trujillo is while I was in Panama, I hunted down several hundred previously I guess they're technically declassified, but they're previously published documents that highlight correspondence between Noriega, the CIA, DEA, and Department of Justice, stemming back from the early 1970s right up until 1987. And they essentially they tell the story of Noriega's relationship with the United States, where the United States has always been pretty honest about the fact that Noriega was an intelligence asset for the Americans, and how he was tasked with curbing the drug trade that was coming out of Colombia for a very long time. What they never sort of led on people to believe, or what they never sort of revealed, was just how important he was and how much gratitude they gave him and how many favors they asked of him. So I hunted down these several hundred documents from this guy Trujillo, who Noriega gave them to him in the 1990s, and Trujillo considers himself
held on to them.
Held on to them.
Wow.
Yeah, he considers himself to be a historian. He was the mayor of Panama City in the early 2000s, I think. But he held on to them. It's over 200 of these documents, and then there were another 200 pages of these international human rights organization reports. There's archived articles from the New York Times, the Washington Post, things that just show that the story isn't exactly what has been told to us.
Well, it fits in perfectly with every other story around it. Like the United States putting people in power while they're useful for the United States, and then when they're no longer useful, getting rid of them and disposing of them.
Yep, and that's the theme of the book, right? The theme of the book is that this is a framework for how the CIA and the United States operates all around the world, right? They pick... the book shows how and why they pick a foreign strongman or a leader, how and why they build him up, how and why they use that person to get what they want, and how and why they discard of them when they have no more use, right?
Right.
And it's a framework. You could apply that to Augusto Pinochet in Chile. You could apply it to Saddam Hussein. You could apply it to even the Shah of Iran, right? In 1953, there was a coup to overthrow the Shah. It was Shah Reza's father, I believe, that the coup tried to overthrow, and then the United States were basically just no, we don't want someone else in there, because between the US and the UK, the oil coming out of Iran was just too important. What we now know as BP, I forget what it used to be called, but they felt really threatened. Iran essentially wanted ownership over their own oil production, right? So the US funds the Shah and keeps him in power until the Ayatollahs overthrow him in 1979, right? So it's just one instance. But the Noriega thing
Gaddafi too, right?
Gaddafi was another one. Yeah, and Noriega and Gaddafi were super close. In 1988 and 1989, Noriega had a feeling that, because Noriega was indicted by the US government in 1988, which essentially, for any listeners, it just means he was accused of these things, but officially accused. So Noriega was obviously worried that the US were going to come for him, as they had just done in Grenada 5 or 6 years prior. And he used to call Gaddafi once a week, and they would chat about the US government, and Gaddafi would give him advice. That's what Carlos told me. And then Fidel Castro used to give Noriega advice all the time, because in Latin America, a lot of these socialist, left leading leaders, Noriega he didn't really have a stance. He really just was a strong man. He was all about power, ego, influence, and also Like he really just wanted that power, right? But a lot of these left leaders really look up to Castro because they see Castro as the only guy who took on the United States and won. Like the United States never overthrew Cuba, you know?
Right.
But look at all these other countries that the United States like really tried to and did, you know?
Yeah, Kennedy kind of pulled the plug on that, kind of with the Bay of Pigs. I think they were supposed to send air support, and he never did. And that was one of the main reasons I think he got whacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. The whole history of South America is just so bananas. Was there any? Did he ever have anything to do with or ever meet with Che Guevara?
No, I asked. Yeah, I asked because actually Irish people love Che Guevara.
They love him?
Yeah, because Che Guevara's Irish blood, and he actually visited Ireland a couple times, and Ireland's like, historically speaking, it leans to the left a little bit. You know, it's changing a little bit now. I think I actually haven't lived there for about 10 years. I've lived in the States for the majority of that time, but yeah, man, Che Guevara, there's some, I think it's on his mom's side that he's got like Irish blood, and there's like a lot of weird connections between.
It's crazy how he's become like this popular cultural hero icon. I don't know how that happened. Was that Rage Against the Machine that made that happen?
I don't know, dude.
Yeah.
I think about that, and I just think that he's this
monster.
I think he's just like this handsome dude who had his face painted everywhere. And I think people just like naturally gravitated toward someone with so much conviction.
Somebody was on the show who knew him. I can't remember who it was now, but they were telling us a story about how in Cuba there was basically all these families that were in line to get clothes or food or something somewhere, and he was like patrolling it, and there was like this kid was crying, and the mother was there. And he went and like approached the mom, and he's like, "Tell your kid to shut up, stop crying." He's like, "He's hungry, he's hungry." And then Che Guevara went, "Okay," grabbed the kid by his hair and blew his head off right in front of his mom. He's not hungry anymore.
Jesus, dude.
Was that wow. Felix Rodriguez?
That might have been Felix.
Wow, dude. Yeah. I can't say I know too much about even like the Cuban Revolution itself. While I was there, somebody handed me a book about the Bay of Pigs, and they said, "This should be your next story." That's why I said I wanted to go to Cuba while I was in Panama, but it just didn't work out. And I think it's interesting, but I know nothing about it other than what Carlos has told me about his relationship with Fidel Castro, which when it comes to intelligence and how that sort of all worked during the Cold War, like Fidel Castro knew that in order to sort of stay where he was, he divulged information to American intelligence agencies all the time, but through Noriega, right? And through all these other leaders. It was never like really, really direct correspondence, but like Noriega and Castro were tight, you know? For instance, when Castro needed like sensitive US intelligence about what was going on in Latin America, like he would call Noriega and say, "Hey, what's going on?" And Noriega would divulge the information. So Noriega was, you know, obviously he flipped all the time, and I think the US kind of knew that, but they genuinely needed him because the drug trade coming out of Colombia with like the Ochoas and Escobar in the 1980s was just like, or late 1970s and the 1980s, especially the 80s, was just so strong and such a threat that Noriega was like a necessary evil for a long time.